And one of the big issues is the death of borders, because I think for a lot of authors, we depended on people being able to go to a bookshelf. And maybe they didn't know our name before, but they saw a book that looked fun. Maybe it was an author that they hadn't heard of, and they started flipping through the pages and they said, hey, this is pretty good. And then they were able to just take it and go to the register and purchase it. Yeah. But it's harder to do that on Amazon.
Oh, for sure. Well, they have that, if you like this, you'll like this too.
But there's something about being able to just, spend a half an hour in Borders just going up and down the aisle and looking and saying, hey, that's a cute title, or that's a fun cover, or, just opening it and saying, hey, I like that font. It looks friendly.
Yes,
and
there is something to that.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen. But when I got your book from Barnes & Noble, for the first time ever, they gave me a little receipt that had a separate piece of paper that said, you may also like, and listed 4 other novels.
Well, that's wonderful. Novels. That's helpful. That's great.
Yes, it was too late because I'd left the shop. But I did pay attention, and if I was going back again, I remember when I used to take my daughter, I would have kept that and used it next time, or maybe even gone to Amazon with it.
Terrific.
So that was a pretty good thing.
That makes me feel great. I didn't know that they did that.
Yeah. So now, do you think, for any writers out there, do you think that do you have a special way of approaching your writing that makes your writing so easy for adults and kids to read? Because it does have that, there's a sophistication to it that they don't all have.
I tried to write in a way that's fun for me, that keeps me interested, that's amusing for me. And I like books that have style that just sort of crackles. And I pay a lot of attention to good sentences that just come to life. And I think if you write like that and you have a lot of empathy for your characters, including the adults in the world of the kid, then there's something for everybody to respond to. For example, in Trauma Queen, it was really important that the mom in the book be a character in her own right. I think a lot of times in kids' books, the adults in the world, including the parents, are very superficial, one-dimensional characters, and that's not interesting for adults to read. They don't want to be backdrops. And so the mom in this book is a very flawed person, but I wanted her to have a point of view that the daughter has to eventually come to understand.
Yes.
And that's something that, a mom reading the book can connect with.
Yes.
Because we all feel that as parents, that, we're not perfect. We don't want to be one-dimensional, perfect people. We're not. We're interesting. We're flawed.
Yes, of course.
But we're people, and we want to be appreciated that way. And I think if you approach your characters that way, you get better characters.
Yes.
And it makes your books readable by adults, too.
It really seems like it's perfect for the tween age group, because at that age there's the push-pull between the child and the parent. So they're not wanting their parent to be gone away. They still are connected in a very elementary way.
Right.
So that makes sense to me that they would be open to reading more about their parents.
And really all of my books are about kids at this age who are learning to understand that people are complex, that you shouldn't judge people, that sometimes there's a gray area in people's lives, and that you may make judgments about them, but the more you get to know them, the more you appreciate who they really are. I mean, that's what This Is Me From Now On is about. I think that's a theme that I come back to a lot.
You think it's possible for any of us to not judge people? Is that, I don't know.
I think 12-year-old girls can be very judgmental. And one of the things I've learned as an adult is that, we're all just doing our best. Maybe not all of us, but many of us are just trying to do our best. And it's hard being a functioning adult in the world, and it's very easy to criticize. And I think being very critical and judgmental is the way a lot of kids are at this age. And as they get, buffeted by life as things happen to them.
And middle school can be hard.
Middle school is a very judgmental age.
Yes.
And that's
clothing is so important.
Yes, and cliques form, and even teachers come under that kind of scrutiny by kids, and they can be very harsh.
Yes.
And as you get older, I think you become more tolerant.
Yes. And you have less time for it.
Yes.
You get busier. You haven't got time to sit around and criticize all the time.
That's right. It's just so hard to, pay the mortgage and, have a job and take care of your parents and do all the things that you have to do as an adult. I think you become more tolerant of people who are just, living their lives. And that's an important thing for kids to,
to begin
the process of learning. Yeah.
Do you have a conversation on that topic at your mother-daughter book groups?
It's really important to me that I'm never didactic. I don't ever want to be telling kids, how to think or what to do. And if there's a message in any of my books, it's very subtle, and it's, incorporated into the story and the characters. And, I think if I ever tried to say something like that at a book club or a meeting, or certainly if I ever tried to say something like that explicitly in a book, I would immediately turn off my readers.
Everyone. Yes. Do mothers ever say to you anything about it?
Well, they love that I have characters that they can relate to, that they feel, show kids something about what it's like from the other side of the desk or the other side of the kitchen table. Yeah. They really appreciate it. I mean, that's one of the joys for me, is when I do mother-daughter book clubs, and I hear from moms who say, I really liked reading this book with my daughter because I liked the book, And it was something that I identified with.
Yes. And that's something that continues. My daughter and I, she's 19, and we still read the same books and discuss them. And
really?
Yes. Oh, yes. That doesn't stop. So it's really
that's terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gives you a common language.
It does, and also no one's opinion is worth more than anyone else's. So that is great for the kids, because they feel like my mom can't tell me what to do now.
Exactly. Yes. And also, I think in the tween years, it becomes very difficult sometimes for moms and daughters to sit down and talk about, self-esteem or body issues or some of the, the more thorny topics. Yeah. And it's a lot easier when you're talking about somebody else. So you could sit around and gossip about the characters and say, oh, I don't know about that. Why was she doing that?
Yes, without getting the defensive approach.
Exactly, without saying that this is not something I would do, or why did you do that? It's much easier if you're saying, that character, I'm not sure about that friendship.
And she gets the message without it being in her face.
It's much less threatening.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's a very lovely way to go about it, actually. I wish I had realized that at the time.
So do I. I never did a mother-daughter book club, when my kids were young, and I feel terrible now because I see how lovely they are.
Oh, but you still can.
Well, but with my kids,
I know what you mean. But
it's harder when they get older. I mean, I think you have an extraordinary thing if you can do that with your daughter at 19. But
she's reading short stories that I love. So and the minute she got her books this semester, she just said, "Mom, I've got Chekhov's short stories."
Oh, so that's great.
So that's really a treat. Yes, and she steals all my latest books. She'll just peruse the shelves and
that's wonderful,
and grab them. So. With yours, I know you have 2 sons and a daughter.
Yes.
I'm curious about how much reading did you offer your sons, and how did you go about that?
Well, I mean, my kids were, I started reading my books to my kids when they were, 6 months old. Mm-hmm. That's what we did. That's what I did for them. I read books with them, to them, we still have all the books.
Yes, I do too. I have too, yep.
Yeah, and we still quote from them all the time. Mm-hmm. My kids will go over to the shelf and pick up the Sneetches, and we have inside family jokes based on the books that they read when they were 2 and 5. And, so that's just a part of our family. That's who we are. And all 3 of them are big readers still, and it's wonderful. I go through periods where I don't let them read at the table when we're eating dinner, but lately
that's a good problem. That's a really good problem. That's the worst problems is, stopping the video games instead of books, and so do you offer books to your teen boys?
No, by now they've really pretty much figured out what they want to read.
And they buy them themselves?
Yes, they do, or they get them from the library. We have a wonderful library.
Okay.
So.
And do you keep an eye on what they choose, or
no,
not anymore?
Not anymore.
No.
But they have pretty good taste. I think the boys tend to go for Jim Butcher. They love the Dresden Files series and Lovecraft and that kind of more science fiction-y
Okay.
stuff.
Oh, so they've got a lot of choice and a lot of good quality writing in that genre.
They do.
Yeah.
And my daughter reads, right now she's reading at the dinner table, I have to say. She's reading The Importance of Being Earnest.
Is she? What fun.
And she's giggling. It's wonderful. And she's, this summer she was reading Pride and Prejudice, but she also loves John Green.
Yes.
Loves John Green. And
An Abundance of Catherines.
Yes.
He's
I
great.
think he's her favorite.
Is he?
And she likes Libba Bray and all kinds of YA authors. So she still every once in a while will pick up Anne of Green Gables or a Roald Dahl that she loved when she was in 4th grade. She's reading on a whole range of ages, which I think is really wonderful.
Yes, and perhaps unusual.
I think so, but I think it's I think when books are so much a part of your family, they stay present and they stay on the shelves. They're like beloved stuffed animals.
Yes. And you have to rove far and wide to get your stimulation.
And I don't want to ever tell my kid, you shouldn't be reading this. You should, I think it's very healthy for them to read books in a range of ages and genres. And
as long as they're reading.
As long as
it doesn't matter what they're reading, as long as they're reading.
And my boys went through a period where they were only reading graphic novels, and I thought that was fine.
Yeah, you were happy with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you do go to your school visits, are kids also interested in writing? Do they ask you about that?
They do ask about that. And I do creative writing workshops. And I think one of the things that's happened is there's this whole growth in fan fiction. So a lot of times kids who are on various websites will be producing their own versions of the kinds of writing that they're reading, and that's healthy too.
Yes,
I think that's terrific.
Do people ever send you fan fiction?
Yes, I have gotten some. It's very touching. It's wonderful. Yeah.
It's not something I've explored. Do you respond to people who send you?
I always respond, and I get a lot of emails from kids, and I get letters too. Sometimes I get letters from kids who have the assignment at school to write to their favorite author or whatever it is, and some of those letters are you could tell that the teacher is behind them.
Yes.
But the ones that I really love are the letters that come from kids who just say, with purple gel pen, sparkly gel pen, I just wanted to tell you I finished your book, and it was great.
Oh, that must be great.
It is. It's wonderful. Yeah. And I get emails like that too. I always respond because I think that's something that's happened as a development that I think is really wonderful. When I was 12 years old, I never wrote to authors.
No.
I didn't know you could. No. I didn't know you could find their address. I didn't know you could get their email address on their website. There was no such thing. And so they were, people out there in the ether.
Yes.
But now kids assume that any author that they read is approachable.
Yes.
And so they approach you, and they'll send you an email, and sometimes these email exchanges go on for a while, back and forth. And sometimes I've used kids' names or their streets or the names of their cats in my books.
I was just about to ask you that.
I do, and I tell them that I'm going to do that. They're so excited.
There are some very sweet pictures of your cats on your website.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of really gratuitous animal pictures. I love those cats are so sweet. And I read that you will sit there typing with one hand and throwing. What do you do?
Those little twist ties that are on bags of bread, or also the little plastic things that are on the top of milk containers. Sometimes, if you take them off, they make great cat toys because they can. I have a cat who plays fetch.
Fetch. Just happened. No training. Just happened.
We started when she was a kitten, and she's still doing it.
Oh, that is so funny.
And since the weather has gotten nicer, she's been friskier. So the last few days, I have been typing at my computer with one hand and tossing cat toys with my other one.
And people can see her on your website. That's very sweet. And do you Skype with schools?
I do. I do more of that. I think it's a great way to be able to connect with kids all over the country,
Yes.
because sometimes, you know, there's a limit to how many school visits you can do in your area. But with Skype, you can, you know, I had a Skype visit with a mother-daughter book club in Minnesota over the summer. It's, you know, it's very
That's
easy.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how about budget cuts?
Well, they've affected school and library budgets hugely, and it makes it harder for schools and libraries to invite you, which is, you know, really sad.
Such a shame, because that one-on-one meeting an author is really such a thrill. Is there anything that mothers and daughters and anyone can do to try and encourage the funding? I mean, who should they contact in their local communities?
Well, I think a lot of PTAs have discretionary funds for this, for, you know, author visits, and maybe that's a way to circumvent.
Just keep requesting.
Right. And, you know, the truth is, I think a lot of authors have become much more negotiable in their fees.
Not that we want to suggest that.
No, but the reality
it's
is
true,
that, you know, authors do want to connect with kids.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of teachers and librarians as well really understand how important that connection is.
Yes.
So, you know, it's one thing for a teacher to stand in front of a classroom and with a book. It's another thing for the author of the book to come to the classroom and to say, talk to me. Let's
ask me questions.
Let's, you know, here I am, and you know, let's have a conversation.
Yes, there's still, I think, the power of the printed book. I mean, to me, this has much more authority than a downloaded ebook. Obviously, you know, it's not the same for everyone. But so, what's your next project?
Well, right now I'm writing a book that is a middle school girl's perspective on middle school boy puberty. That sounds very clinical, but it's about how weird boys are when they get to middle school. And
how interesting.
How they change. And again, it's about, really what it's about is, you know, judging and then sort of slowly learning not to be so judgmental.
Right.
Which is that theme that I always come back to. But, you know, it's about friendship, and it's about, you know, looking at boys as the other, as this strange creature who's undergoing a change in public in a way that girls don't really.
No. Well, not quite as much, perhaps.
Right. Not as dramatically and not as humiliatingly, I think.
Yes.
So that's what it's about.
And are you fishing back in your memory to remember what that was like?
And I remember distinctly being in 7th grade and looking around and, you know, noticing which boys had different voices and which boys were still little shrimps, because I'm so tall. That was an issue always for me. Wow. And just, you know, sort of keeping a checklist in my head about who was going where.
That's going where. I went to an all-girls school, so we didn't have that.
Oh.
I'll have to read the book, find out what that was like. Well, that's about all we have time for today. So thank you very much for coming along.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Tessa.
Thank you. And thanks very much for stopping by. Bye-bye.
Bye.